Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2013 Skoll Awards for Social Entrepreneurship. And I don't have a clock, so most of us have traveled here to Oxford from our homes in other places. And those homes in our home countries are the places to which we will return. But for a few of us, returning is no longer possible. Because for these friends among us, the North African stretch of the Sub-Sahara, known as the Sahel, which has been theirs for generations, has been hijacked by extremists who want to silence their voices.
To explore the origin of the blues is to retrace the ancient arteries of trade deep into the Niger River basin of West Africa. Winding north through Nigeria, Benin, Burkina Faso, and Mali, a rich and timeless cultural mosaic unfolds. Where river meets desert, we've arrived at the fabled city of Timbuktu. The great Malian bluesman Ali Farka Toure once said of this mystic place, "We are right at the heart of the world." Timbuktu has been Africa's crossroads of trade, religion, and education for centuries. It's also here that Tuaregs and griots have long gathered to celebrate their musical traditions. In more recent times, Timbuktu's Festival in the Desert has grown into the most celebrated musical pilgrimage on the continent, drawing musicians and fans the world over. It's a festival of profound plurality and peace, where the echoes of ancient musical traditions still carry across the dunes.
This part of West Africa is like the cradle of music, and Mali in particular, which became the blues, which became rock and roll, went to America. It's really it's like the big bang of all the music that we love.
But in 2012, foreign extremists invaded and divided the country of Mali. And under the violent repression of fundamentalist law, all music was banned. And suddenly, there was silence. Mass human suffering and catastrophic setbacks in the battle against extreme poverty. Today, the cultural heritage of this once vibrant region is but a flickering flame, and peace, a distant mirage. Until the music can return to its roots with freedom of expression and dignity, this festival in the desert has become a festival in exile.
Kana to bara glokri nga kene sate make. Ki kana to bara glokri nga kene sate make mbidili. Ki kana to bara glokri nga kene sate make mbidili. Makengi kana blind. Makengi kana blind. Furo bana.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm channeling my inner Peter Gabriel here, but let's now meet our wonderful musicians in exile. Mama Wallet Amin, Habib Quixote, Vieux Fakatore, Basaku Coyote, Mama Kone, and Vales Azayan. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed the first stop on this epic journey of exile that will continue around the world until these musicians are able to return home. This community stands in solidarity with them and all they represent. Sometimes an idea grabs you and doesn't let go. This one actually sent a chill up my spine. The idea is that we have actually crossed over into a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. This means we haven't just affected, but actually changed the way the Earth works. Like me, you probably have only a dim memory of that timeline we all learned in primary school. You know, the one that goes back 4.5 billion years or so ago and then starts to get interesting as life oozes onto the scene a few billion years later. Even if it's starting to come back, though, you probably don't think whether we're in this era or that epoch has much to do with what we do or why we're here. But that's where I think you might be wrong. Let me share why. Although the human species has been around for at most 200,000 years, a split nanosecond, we have more than made our presence known. In this geological blink of an eye, we have brought forth works of genius and beauty. From simple instruments made of stone or bone have come our civilizations, and from those have come our ways of living together, our understanding of the world, and the marvelous ways through which we express meaning, our cultures, our songs, our drawings, and dance. Smart as we are, though, we're only just beginning to understand the elemental force of nature we've become. Geologists are a conservative bunch. When they believe the fossil record of our time will mark a total break with the era we've been in for the past 10,000 years, it's worth paying attention. And when the Vatican agrees with the scientists, as it has in this case, then it's really worth listening up. Here's what the scientists and theologians believe the evidence will record, that a mere 50 or 100 years ago, humans actually took command of the Earth's fundamental systems, our land, our oceans, our rivers, and our atmosphere. How? By farming, damming, mining, and building. By cutting, pumping, and burning. In a mere century, 1 century, we've burned our way through 200 million years of fossil fuels and our life-giving forests. It wasn't all that long ago, about 500 years or so, that Copernicus ushered in a new worldview with his proof that the sun, not the Earth, was the center of the universe. Copernicus thoroughly disrupted the mental model of his time, relegating planet Earth and its human inhabitants to the cosmological sidelines. How ironic, then, that science is putting us back in charge, smack dab at the center of the universe. Accepting the idea of the Anthropocene, literally the age of man, requires that we take stock of the fact that we are completely and utterly changing the ways the Earth works, with consequences far more powerful than anything we have thought up to now. Why should social entrepreneurs care? Because their work, our work, already has its hands full tackling the massive disruption and injustice that characterizes our time. Now look out 10 years, 100, or at least to a world with 9 billion people, 9 billion humans who will share the planet just a couple of decades down the road. How will we ensure enough food and water, enough medicine and energy, enough security, education, and dignity for us all? How on earth can we do what has to be done? Well, we're about to find out. But first, let me invite to the stage the social entrepreneur whose vision launched the 1,000 journeys that have brought us here tonight. He truly doesn't need an introduction here in Oxford or in any gathering of people determined to change what needs to be changed. He's put his wealth, his talent, his time, everything he has to give on the line for good in the world. Now it's my honor to present to you a man who's every bit as extraordinary and as authentic as you think he is, and he is a great karaoke partner. My boss, my inspiration, and my partner in singing John Lennon, Jeff Skoll.
Artists have a special power to disrupt our thinking and compel us to justice, righteousness, and changing the world. Annie Lennox is an internationally acclaimed singer-songwriter, recording artist, political activist, and philanthropist, but to us, she's first and foremost a passionate member of the Skoll community. She's a tremendous advocate for women and children affected by HIV/AIDS, and she lends her name, her time, her talent, and her dedication to raising awareness of AIDS worldwide. Those of us who were here last year remember how Annie rocked this stage with her anthem for the Skoll community. Annie Lennox and her music are truly a force for good in this world.
Sweet dreams are made of this.
I think of myself in terms of being an advocate, possibly a voice with a platform, and as a woman, I hope that I can represent my gender. All women should have human rights. All women should have access to education, access to good medical care, and to logistical protection. How many of you knew that even currently, 1 in 3 pregnant women in South Africa are HIV positive? Would you raise your hands if you knew that? 1, 2, 3. Don't you think it's kind of strange that you didn't know that? I am a mother, and I know what it must be like to have a child that would be infected with HIV, and what I would feel like if it were me and I couldn't get access to treatment. I would think I'm going to die, and I would think my baby's going to die. And it doesn't have to be like that.
And I'm a global UN AIDS ambassador.
The singer-songwriter Annie Lennox.
Many of the people that are affected have been women, and the voice has not been able to come through and really make that, collective, effective rallying for change.
To confer a special honorary award for social entrepreneurship to UN AIDS Goodwill Ambassador, Officer of the Order of the British Empire, and Brit and Grammy award-winning artist, Annie Lennox.
Oh God, I cannot tell you how I have been thinking about what I could possibly say to you. Because you all in this room, all of you social entrepreneurs, are my heroes. And I don't say that lightly. At a time in the world when the Kardashian family are known to everybody in the planet, I don't understand why everybody doesn't know who you are. And that riles me. That riles me. You see, there seems to be a huge impasse between reality and abstraction, and this incredible focus that people have on celebrity culture, which is vacuous and dumbed down. I don't understand that. If it wasn't for the fact that I was born in Scotland, where I had access to resources that I never thought twice about until I went to developing countries and I could compare the difference. I understood that as a woman, as a mother, I'd been given tremendous rights. And it's down to me as a woman to speak up for those that haven't got access to those things. It's down to me. And I can only tell you that I am hugely frustrated because I really want to disrupt the entire media. I want to tell them that they are inordinately resourced and that they have so much responsibility and they don't do enough. I'm sorry, I am furious about it. I'm friends with Eve Ensler. She's one of my heroines. And Eve, you know how hard she's worked for the last few decades, and it's taken her and her compatriots years to get to a place with 1 billion rising. It's extraordinary. It shouldn't have to take so much. What does it take? Rocket science? I don't understand. Please stand up if you're a woman. Please stand up. I honor you. I honor you. Don't sit down, don't sit down. Sally does this all the time. She makes everybody stand up. I'm making you stand up now. Please stand up if you're a man. Join us. Be our partners. We're all feminists. All of us. It's not one against the other. We can do this together. We can change the world together, men and women united. You know that. It's not so difficult. Please sit down. Take the weight off your feet. I'm humbled. I'm deeply humbled. I don't feel I'm worthy of this. I really don't. And in any case, it doesn't matter, because you know what? All I really care about are the women that I'm trying to represent. I'm trying to represent them and their children, and there are billions of them, and I'm just one person. But if I can maybe inspire other people to take this seriously, the issues, not only that I endorse, but all of these incredibly infinite challenges that we all face. And if people can change their minds and they can say, you know, I'm getting my, I can't say it, I'm getting my behind off my backside, and I'm going to collectively get together with other people. I'm going to do what it takes. It's, you know, that's the thing. Half the world, so resourced, half the world, nothing. Come on, we can do it. That's why I was going like this. I meant it last year when I was singing. I'm a singer, you know. I'm a singer. I'm not really I don't really speak that much, but I had to get over it. I've had to learn how to speak, how to address. I was doing an interview with Reuters earlier on today. She was asking me, how did you get started with this? And I was listening to a great man speaking, and he was telling me, it was Nelson Mandela, by the way. He was standing in front of his former prison cell. This was my aha moment. I'll share it with you and then I'll leave. This was my turning point. Nelson Mandela, one of the most respected visionaries, one of the most revered activists of all time, standing in front of his former prison cell in the exercise yard at Robben Island, telling the international press, there is a pandemic going on in my country that is a virtual genocide that is affecting women and children. Where were the headlines? Who was talking about that? Who is still talking about that? There are still 1 out of 3 pregnant women in South Africa still HIV positive. We can do something to change this. Mothers to Mothers are doing something to change this. All of you are doing something to change it. So enough of me. I'm going to say thank you to Jeff. Thank you to Sally. Thank you so much. I've been a groupie for the last few years. Now I'm a real, genuine, bona fide scholier. Thank you.
Opportunity for education and a job, for enough money to raise a family, marks the difference between societies whose people succumb to violence and despair and those whose citizens prosper. The Skoll Awards tonight honor 2 individuals whose organizations are building bridges to opportunity where it is needed most.
If you think about any issue in the world to figure out, okay, well, what causes that? People are poor, well, what's causing the poverty? If you keep peeling the onion and going lower and lower, the root cause of pretty much anything is the lack of education.
Education. The UN says it's a basic human right, but it's one that many are denied.
Almost 4 million children are born in Pakistan every year. Almost half of these children never see the face of a school.
Even in developed countries, the public education model seems broken.
But what's exciting about right now is the opportunity to fundamentally rethink that model.
The state of education in Pakistan at best is dismal. More than 25 million children are out of school. Children on the streets are multiplying in high numbers, going directionless into activities like drugs, beggary, terrorism. This is like a time bomb. Pakistan is sitting on a time bomb. We feel that we can do a lot more. We haven't done enough.
In 1996, TCF began opening low-cost private schools as an alternative to government-run schools. They wanted to overcome parents' reluctance to have girls taught by men or send kids a long way to school.
We plant our schools right in the heart of the community. And in order to achieve gender balance, Citizen Foundation decided to have a full female faculty.
Akila Kassim is one of 250 TCF teachers who themselves went to TCF schools.
1 and 2 जब मैं TCF स्कूल जाना शुरू हुई तब मेरी उम्र 7 साल थी। सबसे पहले ये कि मेरे ख़ानदान में कोई पढ़ा लिखा नहीं था। अब जब हम दोनों को
TCF charges only what families can afford, which allowed Akila's parents to send her to school.
अफसोस भी होता है, बढ़िया जो बैठ गई ना, मैं मेरी मजबूरी से बिठा दी।
तालीम हासिल करने के बाद मेरी ज़िंदगी में बहुत बड़ी तब्दीली आई। अगर तालीम मेरे पास ना होती तो हो सकता था कि मैं अपनी अम्मी की तरह जो है वो झाड़ू पोछे कर रही होती।
TCF has now built 900 schools in Pakistan. It's serving more than 115,000 girls and boys. And most importantly, it's changing basic attitudes.
मेरी अकेला पढ़ी TCF में तो फिर मैं तीनों को बिठाई। इसका अब्बू भी ऐसे बोलता है जब हम 2 रोटी कम खाएंगे भले पढ़े।
If you need to change the destiny of a country, you need to fulfill the aspirations of every child.
From an office in Mountain View, California, Salman Khan is running what may be the world's largest classroom.
Well, in this particular example,
Since 2006, he's made more than 3,000 videos, which are now viewed by 6 million students a month at home or in schools.
and g of x would be sine of x.
Though Khan Academy got its start as an online tool for individuals, it's now taking an important new step with a small US-based pilot program.
We're also exploring how the same exact tool, not only can it be used for self-learners, for independent learners, but how it can be used to rethink what a classroom is about. From a model where classroom was lecture-based and kids would be quiet the whole time, to one where it's not lecture-based and the students are interacting with each other and the teacher the whole time.
The traditional model of teaching, I never felt comfortable because I knew some kids were struggling and you had a handful of kids who needed to speed up. But being just one teacher in the classroom, I had to kind of equalize it and normalize it to the middle.
The Khan videos allow students to learn at their own pace.
When I don't understand a module, I watch a video, and then Sal Khan, he explains the law and he teaches us how to do it.
And the system lets teachers track each student's progress.
And because everyone is working on their own, you have the time to meet small groups and individual students one-on-one.
So let's talk about some accomplishments.
At the end of the day, I can say, wow, I got this person to this place. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to have to work with this person. Instead of like, okay, I taught my lesson. I threw it out there. I wonder who caught it. So it's a very different way of teaching.
Khan Academy is now working closely with 50 classrooms. Its lectures have been translated into more than 20 languages and are reaching students in some 200 countries.
In the last year, we hit 43 million students around the world. That's amazing scale.
They've watched over 200 million lessons, and they do 3 million exercises plus every day. The potential here is billions of people around the planet. So my dream is a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere.
Please join me in welcoming Mushtaq Chhapra of the Citizens Foundation to the stage.
I want to share a story with you about a young 12-year-old boy who, in one of our schools, is talking to the principal about how he wants to pay his admission fee in 4 installments of 5 cents each. And one of our co-founders happened to be there, and he was curious. He wanted to know. He said that, young lad, this is not such a large sum of money. Why doesn't your father pay for it, the full amount? The boy comes and tells that, sir, my dad is no more. I have a mother and a 7-year-old sister. So the founder comes back and says that your mother must be working somewhere. Why doesn't she pay? Again, he comes back and says that, sir, my mother is blind. What do you do to make ends meet? The boy says, I have a small snow-crushed ice shack, and I sell this ice cone, and I make $5 in a month. And I make enough to maybe bring 3 naans for breakfast. But there is only 1 naan at dinner time. And our blind mother keeps on asking us, their children, have you eaten? I've trained my sister to say, yes, Ma, go ahead, we have eaten. So this is a situation which prevails in a lot of poor homes of Pakistan. Now think about your own experience, the happy times you've had in your school life, all the good things you've learned, all the good friends you've made, your teachers who have been instrumental in molding your character. And now we come back and see, what do we give to society? I and the 5 entrepreneurs came up and we said that we want to give these children a formal schooling system, so these children can have an opportunity to be someone or something in life. By the grace of God, today TCF has the largest network of schooling system in Pakistan. A large number of TCF boys and girls are in tertiary colleges today. TCF is the closest proxy to what the government could be doing had they had a proper management. We have set the standard for reforming the education sector in Pakistan, and we will continue working towards it. This brings us to today and the huge challenge of achieving scale. We recognize that merely building more classrooms cannot keep pace with the population. We have 2 options. We can work with the government to reform the public schools, provided the management of school is merit-based, or we can work through the private sector directly. Over the next year, we are developing a business plan for franchising a primary education system that can be adopted by other low-cost entrepreneurs to help them set up small neighborhood schools. At the same time, we find an opportunity at our doorstep through the Skoll Foundation. I am happy to announce that the TCF will be working with the Khan Academy to help our teachers improve content knowledge and address the scale challenge. During our 17-year journey, we have made beautiful discoveries about the human nature. The TCF story is one of faith in human spirit, in the overwhelming goodness of human beings, and in resilience and perseverance, and the confidence that the future will be brighter than today. Thank you. And I wish that we can all have the compassion and it's very infectious what Ms. Lennox said. It really moves me. It gives me goosepimples. I think we all social entrepreneurs know that. Thank you so much.
This evening's next Skoll Award for Social Entrepreneurship goes to Salman of Carne Academy.
the one thing that I want to emphasize is, although this did start as kind of one-person project, literally in a closet, it's now much larger than me. We're now a team of 40 people formally, and frankly, we have hundreds or frankly thousands of volunteers around the world who are taking our content to villages, partners like the Citizens Foundations. We have people who are translating the content, and they're really the people that are going to make it a reality. Without them, our mission statement is a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. But without them, it's a free world-class education for the English-speaking world who happen to have broadband access. But we think we can change that. One thing I tell my team all the time is, a lot of people talk in terms of things being a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But one thing that's starting to dawn on us, and it's a little surreal, and it feels like we're in the middle of a science fiction book, this actually feels like a once-in-a-millennium opportunity. You have these inflection points in history. You have the colonization of North America. You have these new institutions pop up, the Ivy League schools. You have the Industrial Revolution, all sorts of new institutions pop up, schools of engineering. We're now in probably the biggest inflection point in history, and frankly, we're at the very, very early stages of it. And it was a delusion for one guy in a closet literally 2 years ago to think that maybe this could be one of those institutions that take advantage of the next inflection point. But frankly, with help from folks like y'all, partners like Mushtaq and the Citizens Foundation, it's starting to become more and more of a reality. And to just get a sense of it, I used to give talks, and I used to say, one day this might be used in Mongolia. And then a few months ago, we actually got a letter from Mongolia. I was very excited, a young girl named Zaya, and she actually sent a little YouTube video saying, hey, I love Khan Academy. She was 15 years old when she sent it. This is great. I use it for all my studies. And at first I said, well, this is great. She must be a middle-class young girl. She has access to a computer and broadband. But then I actually read the text of the email a little bit more carefully. It turns out that there was a group from Cisco Systems in Silicon Valley that they used their own vacation time to travel to Mongolia and set up computer labs with broadband in orphanages in Mongolia. And Zaya was one of the orphans at that school. And that by itself was kind of surreal and crazy for all of us. But then it got even stranger. Zaya has now, she's 17 years old, she's now become our prime producer of content in the Mongolian language. And these are small stories right now, and it reminds us that we're at the very early stage of, frankly, what all of us are working at. But what's exciting for us at the Khan Academy, and we're partnering with all of you guys, is historically philanthropy has been around looking at what the middle class or the rich have and say, well, that's good, but that's resource intensive. Maybe we can create a cheaper version for the poor because they have nothing else. What's exciting about what I think the next 5, 10, or 20 years is going to happen is, famously, Bill Gates uses Khan Academy with his children. And the reality that we're going into, we don't have to go to the Zayas of the world and say, oh, well, we're going to give you a cheap approximation of what the best is. The reality I hope to see is that we will give them the exact same thing that Bill Gates' children have. And so, once again, a huge honor to be here, and I genuinely believe, I think it's often darkest before the dawn, so to speak. Over the next 10, 20, 30 years, this scarce resource, this resource that we literally view as the determining factor between the haves and the have-nots, it will not be scarce, and it will be a fundamental human right, like clean drinking water or shelter. Thank you.
Our vision for the world begins with the hope for peace, with the rights of every woman, child, and man secured by rule of law. In the midst of violence and ethnic tensions or horrific rights violations, it may feel that ending conflict and rebuilding society are insurmountable challenges. But at the same time, the boundaries that separate people, geography, language, culture, politics, have never been as permeable as they are today. Social entrepreneurs are applying radical approaches to transform international systems and redress legacies of inequality and failed governance.
Today, armed conflict affects more than 50 countries. 1 of every 4 people faces the daily threat of criminal and political violence.
The manner in which conflict affects people is enormous.
More often than not, women and children are disproportionately affected.
They live in a permanent state of fear, not knowing what their future will bring to them.
That's not a stain that goes away. It doesn't end with the end of the conflict. These families live with the pain for years, and the societies suffer for decades.
We now live in a multipolar world.
The modern institutions of diplomacy have adapted very poorly to the nature of modern conflict.
And so everyone's having to become much more savvy about engaging with many more players.
Independent Diplomat is a group of former diplomats who are rewriting the rules of traditional diplomacy.
All too often, people whose interests are most at stake in an international discussion of an issue are the last people to be consulted. The mission of Independent Diplomat is to help marginalised groups and countries be part of that discussion and to get their needs across effectively. In a sense, we're gamekeepers turned poachers because we are giving the knowledge of how diplomacy really works to people who are excluded from that magic inner circle, about how to get into it, how to break it.
Independent Diplomat's clients have included South Sudan, Kosovo, Moldova, Croatia, Somaliland, and the Marshall Islands.
I'm getting comfortable in that, I can now speak about climate change and they know that I'm from the Marshall Islands. And that's through the help of the independent diplomats.
Independent Diplomat also helped South Sudan get its voice heard at a critical juncture in its history.
As crazy as it sounds, the United Nations was going to be convening a meeting about the possible independence of South Sudan without inviting a Southern Sudanese representative.
This is a country that was just beginning, that did not have even what you would call established diplomacy. And there was quite a vacuum. I think that vacuum was very well filled by independent diplomats.
Independent Diplomat convinced the Security Council to break with precedent and invite South Sudanese leader Pagan Amum to speak.
For the full implementation of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement.
And here he was, for the first time ever, expressing the needs of his country, South Sudan, in a formal diplomatic meeting. That is the measure of our success. It's not actually ending wars or solving climate change. It is helping our clients be more effective. That's, it's a humble thing, but it's something we can realistically and materially do.
But formal diplomacy is only one way to address conflicts. Crisis action protects civilians in places like the Middle East and Central Africa by coordinating the work of other organizations.
Organizations are stronger if they work together.
The humanitarian groups, the human rights groups, the refugee groups, the conflict groups.
Grassroots organizations, faith leaders, celebrities.
We tend to all do our own thing and do it well, but with a little nudge from crisis action and a lot of support, we can be stronger than our individual voices.
The problem crisis action was created to solve is very simple. How to get this set of organizations to agree to the same message and to the same campaign.
We say to people, are you in or are you out? It's up to you. And what that means is those who opt in are able to really, really devote themselves to a strong position with ambitious targets.
A case in point, the 2011 turmoil in Syria.
We brought together huge coalitions across the Middle East of hundreds of NGOs and civil society organisations. And what we saw was landmark resolutions by the Arab League in which for the first time they cited the need to protect civilians as a reason to act.
Crisis action deliberately works behind the scenes to multiply the work of others.
This is actually one of the only videos you'll ever see about crisis action because it's really important that we don't get credit actually publicly for the work that happens.
There are tens, maybe hundreds of conflicts in the world, depends how you count them. You can't tackle everything, you have to focus, and they're very good at it. And it's impressive what a really small team can achieve by having the right collaborative spirit.
Please join me in welcoming Carne of Independent Diplomat.
For me, Independent Diplomat is not just an NGO. I think they think the same way. It's not even a social enterprise, and it's not even a job, but it is in fact a political mission to remedy a chronic injustice. My colleagues have made the Marshall Islands and the Alliance of Small Island States one of the leading voices in the UN climate change process. Right now, today, this minute, my colleagues are at the UN helping Arab revolutionaries get their views across into a new UN resolution on their country when their country's seat is occupied by the functionaries of an odious dictator. But above all, I owe thanks and gratitude to the clients of Independent Diplomat for some of the most extraordinary moments of my life, one of which you saw just there when Pagam Amin was the first South Sudanese to address the Security Council. He and I stayed up till late the previous night as he crafted his speech word by word. He's an extraordinary man. He speaks 5 languages fluently. He's brilliant. He spent 30 years of his life fighting for the liberation of his country in a guerrilla bush war that cost at least 1 million lives. Our clients in Independent Diplomat turned my political philosophy on its head. As a British diplomat, I thought that people like me, arrogantly, had the right to move peoples and countries around as if they were pieces on a chessboard. Now I realize the few can never know what is best for the many. When at last the many get a seat at the table, the people themselves from the countries themselves, it's clear from what they say that they know far better than me and indeed anybody else around the table what is best for their country. That knowledge was in fact, that insight was in fact a great liberation for me. I once told people when I was a British diplomat that I had a wonderful job, but I got up every morning wondering whether I was doing the right thing with my life. I never ask myself that question now. Once I was on the hilltops in imperial Rome, in the villas, drinking wine and eating grapes with other people with hollow eyes like mine. Today, I'm out there in the rain with the slaves, and as Spartacus said, it is a much, much better place to be. My friends, my educators, my allies, never let go of the anger that you feel against the injustice you're fighting. It will give you the fuel to fight the many battles ahead. But remember, we are many, and they are few. Be fierce, be proud, we shall win. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce our second awardee in this category, Gemma Mortensen of Crisis Action.
So I'm assuming you all know the story about David and Goliath, right? Well, how many of you sometimes feel in your working life that you're battling a giant? Because you're fighting against very, very deeply entrenched interests and very, very calcified opinions, and it's hard to budge. Well, what the very small team at Crisis Action does is it disrupts the inequality which is inherent in the status quo for some of the most vulnerable people on earth. Ordinary people like you and me, for whom conflict has rendered life a living nightmare. And Crisis Action does this by giving those people a very powerful catapult. The kind of catapult you'd see David fight Goliath with in a Nike advert. That kind of powerful catapult. Now, I remember one of the first times I unleashed that catapult, or helped to unleash it, within Crisis Action. It was in 2007, when monks had poured onto the streets of Rangoon and were met with guns and tanks. You probably remember the images of that. And we were tiny at the time, and myself and my predecessor, Brendan Cox, who's somewhere here tonight, we sat, watched horrified, and picked our brains, wondering what we could possibly do to help what looked like was going to be a bloodbath. So we decided to reach out to Burma campaigners who, exhausted and sleep-deprived, somewhat skeptically, to be honest, accepted our help. Now, within 1 week, a group of 10 Burmese monks led a march of 10,000 people through the streets of London. And it was a powerful act of solidarity that was echoed in coordinated events across the world and broadcast throughout the international media. Now, at the time, the UK Prime Minister was not alone in being moved to fight tooth and nail for condemnation of the crackdown at the Security Council. A bloodbath was averted. Now, anyone in crisis action didn't appear in the media, didn't stand on any stage, but we provided the catapult. We helped choreograph it all. So, fast forward a few years to another chapter in Crisis Action story, this time on Syria that you just saw. It's a tragic story. I don't need to tell you how bad it is. We've heard also from Carne. Well, a few weeks ago, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they met in Durban at the BRICS summit. And they met there to cement their ever-increasing influence on global affairs. And this matters because they're among the only governments that might bring some influence to bear on what's going on in Syria today. Now, at the outset of that summit, they planned to express only their deep concern about the situation in Syria. But by the end of it, they had made their strongest demand yet for full, safe and unimpeded humanitarian access across the country. And they had done that because Crisis Action had helped its partner organisations to mobilise, and India and South Africa, and had provided hard facts and figures so that they could jointly petition their governments, compel them to act, so that they could pepper the media with credible voices saying that BRICS must do something about Syria. And what this showed, that statement in the summit, was that there was a recognition that global leadership is about more than GDP. And officials had heard a single powerful message. This isn't about politics, it's about people. And again, Crisis Action had done that behind the scenes, empowering others to do that work and make that difference. And to me, that's why the Skoll.org Award is so important, because in a time of austerity, let's face it, it's not easy, it gives you the financial security to take risks and to innovate, to save lives. And that kind of risk capital, I think, is priceless. So we're not yet at a stage where we can stop conflict outright, at least not yet. But we can ensure that when David walks into that room to fight Goliath, he stands a fighting chance.
What is more fundamental to the quest for a productive and dignified life than our health? The Skoll Awards tonight recognize 2 social entrepreneurs who shine a light on neglected health issues and whose organizations surmount barriers of stigma, ignorance, and lack of access to healing.
1.3 billion people worldwide lack access to health care. Many of them live in rural areas, far from medical facilities.
Imagine a situation where between 80 and 90% of the potential client group is not able to reach decent help.
The poor people cannot afford the cost of traveling.
Because of the expenses and the inconvenience, a lot of people continue to suffer in silence.
It's a terrible situation.
So our challenge is, how do you therefore create this structure and a service delivery kind of opportunity by which all these elements can be addressed?
In India, only 1 in 4 people has access to modern medicine. To reach the rest, World Health Partners is creating a franchised healthcare network that provides high-quality, low-cost services to the poor.
The whole project is based on unleashing that entrepreneurial energy that's available, so commonly available everywhere in the developing world.
Amresh Kumar is one such entrepreneur. He's one of many in India who have long provided informal health services, despite their lack of formal medical training. But WHP has now trained Kumar to operate a telemedicine center that connects patients with doctors hundreds of miles away.
When a patient walks in any of these telemedicine centers, she meets the rural provider who has been trained by World Health Partners to put the probes and cuffs on the right parts of the patient, and the controls are with the doctor.
They are able to now access either a general practitioner or a specialist, not available to them otherwise.
I just asked her the leading questions which I would have asked the patient when she would have come to me for face-to-face consultations. And I could make out my diagnosis.
WHP has also developed a supply chain for medical products so that prescriptions can easily be filled in the village.
Our whole idea is to make markets work for the poor. By franchising a number of providers, we are able to generate volumes, and with volumes we can drive the prices down.
In the next 3 years, WHP is expanding from 4,000 villages to 20,000.
WHP's program is built for scale. There are about 38,000 villages in Bihar. And by the time we finish, we would have a center in or close to every single village of Bihar.
About 70% of Ghana is living in the rural areas, and conditions there are sadly quite harsh. You have schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorders, anxiety disorders. For a whole country of 25 billion people, we have about 14 psychiatrists, and that translates to about 1 psychiatrist per 2 million people.
Many people never get diagnosed and never get treated.
BasicNeeds is changing that by establishing a new community-based model of mental health care.
BasicNeeds provides a system where there hasn't been a system before.
The system focuses on economic and social well-being, as well as medical health. It begins by training primary care doctors, nurses, and community volunteers to diagnose and treat mental illness in areas where there are no psychiatrists.
We're shifting the task that would otherwise be with a specialist onto people who are non-specialized, but who nevertheless have authority.
One such nurse, Subsa Tawala, played a key role in the treatment of school teacher Francis Kubila. Before they met, Kubila's violent behavior had led the village's traditional healer to lock him up.
His family particularly thought that he was a danger to himself and to the community, especially his wife and children.
He'd been locked down in his own home. Now, when I say locked down, I mean his leg had been pinioned in a large log.
Then they use some nails to lock it so that the leg cannot come out.
Kubila's family left him attached to the log for 2 years.
And this is very typical of what happens to people where mental illness is ill understood.
Once the nurse diagnosed Kubila as suffering from psychosis, he gave him medicine that improved his condition quickly. BasicNeeds then helped him, as it does thousands of others, find a new job.
Finding a job is crucial to not only your survival, but also to the reduction of stigma, which means that you get accepted back into society.
They've been helping to demystify mental health, and that has actually helped to remove some of the barriers and discrimination.
When I started the organization, we started with a blank sheet of paper. Now, there's well over 108,000 people who have been through our program. It's a drop in the ocean, but the ocean's very big.
Please join me in welcoming our first awardee in this last category, Gopi Gopalakrishnan of World Health Partners.
As we celebrate social entrepreneurs in this forum, I also want to take the opportunity to celebrate those billions of entrepreneurs among the poor who are normally unsung. This can be as simple as a woman by the roadside with a little piece of cloth selling small piles of peanuts. Or it may be a village youth who has rigged up a water pump to a cart to start his own bus service. But in the healthcare space, there is one such entity. These are untrained providers. They are called the informal providers, who lack medical and technical skills, but who make up for these shortcomings with an enormous or the fantastic ability to reach out to the community and a fabulous relationship and social skills and business acumen. How do we unleash that energy? The provider you saw in the video, he's typical of the providers we see across the world, across the developing world, especially in the villages, where almost 3/4 of the population lives. To use this example, he worked as an assistant to a city-based doctor, picked up some rudimentary skills, came back to his village to become the doctor of the village. This was about 10 years ago. And a couple of years ago, he also invested the required sum of money to join our network. On the one hand, we could convert those rudimentary skills, put him through a training process so that those skills can be enhanced. But because he does the consultations the way you saw, and there are also other systems which are coming into force, he's learning constantly, and his skills are improving constantly. And by connecting his rural patient with qualified doctors who are available virtually, his continued learning, he is going to improve the quality of the care he delivers or he will deliver. Because if a family in a village, especially a poor family, if there's someone dying in their family, they may have to sell their little asset, maybe a buffalo or a patch of land, to travel 1,000 kilometers to get care. But for common ailments such as a headache or fever or cough or a child needing treatment for diarrhea, such rural providers are the ones the community turns to as the first stop. And this is even more so in areas where the government programs don't reach. WHP creates viable markets to serve the poor by using existing local skills and combining them with expertise that can be imported into the community with the advantage of the modern age we all live in, such as advances in technology and reference opportunities. But all our programs, as I mentioned in the video, are built for scale. Because we have to balance between the private sector's need to earn a profit with the need for the rural family or the poor family to get the services at a price which is affordable. This is a thin line we have to walk all the time, which enables us to deliver some of these consultations at a price which is as low as 20 cents. But this is possible only if you are able to generate volumes, as all businesses tell us. For volumes, therefore, we have to build scale. So scale for us is an inevitable part. Scale for us is sheer survival tool. I want to address something a little more fundamental here. If there's a young mother in a village who wants to plan a family, but cannot clamber onto a rickety bus to travel some distance to the city to get, say, an IUD contraceptive, we must find ways of addressing that need. If a provider such as the one you saw can make local arrangements and make sure the services can be delivered by inviting providers from outside from time to time instead of being there all the time. Because the logistical arrangement, as most of you program managers would know, is almost 80-90% of the burden. Then that young woman in that village can get a service right outside her doorstep. Okay. After all, if she wants to have 2 children and plans, she must definitely have the ability to have only those 2 children. She must not suffer the accident of having 10. That's a fundamental right, and we must do everything in our power to protect it and to cherish it. And There are enormous opportunities available outside the traditional systems we are all used to. And that also shows the spirit of entrepreneurship that you're gathered here to honor. And that is something we must tap into and utilize fully to the welfare of all, especially those poorer segments. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to invite our next Skoll Award recipient this evening to join us here, Chris Underhill of BasicNeeds.
My wife and I were two young 21-year-old volunteers. We were in Africa, and we found ourselves in the laboratory of one of those large hospitals having a pregnancy test. Intentionally. We wanted to start a family early, and the good news was that it was all positive. So we floated out from that laboratory with the wonderful technicians shaking our hands. We went outside into the outside of the hospital, and there in front of us was this huge cage. And in the cage were 5 men. And children were leaning through the cage with sticks and poking. These mentally ill people jumped and screamed. They were in pain. And this very sweet moment that I had shared with my wife, and this very bitter moment layered just on top of it, has been with me all that time. There are 450 million people with mental illness in the world. This is not a small problem. And the gap between the provision of treatment in low and middle income countries is as much as 85%. So people are just not getting the basic treatment. And just in case you wondered, depressive disorders are now the leading cause of disability in the world. So, in the year 2000, I started BasicNeeds. We developed this model for mental health and development. And the idea is that people can stay at home. They don't have to go to a grim and often frightening psychiatric hospital hundreds of miles from your home. You can stay at home. You can access treatment. And you can finally get some work, get a job, look after yourself, look after your family, and start to stand proud again, and to reduce that stigma which has crept around your family like a mist trailing around your legs. And you can start to feel good again. And better still, you can join a group. You can give voice and power to these thoughts and these ideas that you may have. So all of this then comes together, and we have that enormous privilege of being able to support governments to make better law. And we use our data, and we bring it all together, and we offer it, for example, to the Ghanaian government. And they, in their strength, with groups of mentally ill people supporting them, have brought in a wonderful new act. And we've done that in other countries as well, where our support has been invited and required. Since I started the organization, we have already been able to work with 500,000 people. And this generous contribution means that by 2018, we will work with at least another 1 million people. in the silence, in the loving silence of this hall, as I accept this award, I remind you of those voices way back then. May they rest in peace, and may we stand shoulder to shoulder to do something about this great illness which now is with us. Please, let us get rid of cages. Let us say no more cruelty. Thank you.
Two years ago, we started a new tradition here by presenting a special award to a man or woman who could rightly be considered a global treasure. The award hasn't got a formal definition or guidelines. We simply know when it's time to present it when there's someone amongst us who's done very special things. Before we even knew to call him a social entrepreneur, Muhammad Yunus was defining the field. Starting in his own humble way, he first proved that the poor were excellent credit risks before going on to found the Grameen Bank and sparking the global microfinance movement. For his work on behalf of the world's poor, Yunus and Grameen were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. 6 years ago, I stood on this stage and presented images of news headlines I imagined as the big problems in the world were solved. And Yunus pulled me aside afterward and he said, "You forgot one more. You forgot about the headline dedicating a museum to poverty." He pictured the opening ceremony featuring the last person in the world to escape poverty and dedicating the museum as a reminder of what we once accepted as the way things were. Yunus has honored us with his presence at multiple Skoll World Forums, and he has guided our path, inspired us, and made us laugh.
I never intended to be a banker. I never intended to get involved with lending money to people. But that's what I do now. It's because I wanted to find a solution to a problem. Poverty is not created by the poor people. Poverty is created by the institutions that we build, the failure of those institutions to address the need of the human beings. One day as I was going around in the village, I see a woman with torn clothes sitting in front of her house and making bamboo stools. So I went near her and started talking with her. She started explaining she makes only 2 pennies a day. Then she explained that she doesn't have the money to buy the bamboo which goes into this bamboo stool. So the trader lends her the money, 25 cents, with the condition that she has to sell at the price that he decides, not the market decides. As a result, she gets only 2 pennies. He actually converted this woman into a slave labor. And I thought I can give her 25 cents. She doesn't have to go and borrow the money from him. But I resisted for a while. Let me see what this means. Next day, what I started doing, I went around in the village. So when my list was complete, I had 42 names on my list who borrowed from the moneylenders. And the total money they borrowed was $27. I couldn't believe people have to go through so much humiliation, so much torture because of this tiny little money. The problem is difficult, but the solution is so simple. If I give this $27 to all these 42 people, they can return the money to the moneylenders and they will be free. And that's what exactly I did. And I asked myself the question, if you can make so many people so happy with such a small amount of money, why shouldn't you do it more? And ever since, I'm trying to do it more and more and more.
It's my pleasure to present the 2013 Global Treasure Award to our friend, Muhammad Yunus.
Well, you heard all these stories today. Each one is more exciting than the next, more inspiring than others. But this is what creates a new horizon for all of us to look forward to see what can be done. And it's within our capacity. And the people who are honoring today and have led the way. And that will become something which will change the world. And what I tried to do in my work, which is quite accidental, I was not designing to do something like that, probably is characterized by saying that I specialize in doing little things, very tiny things. You heard what I just said on the screen. So little. Anybody, anywhere can do that. It doesn't need any special skill, any special background, any kind of special foresight. And there are so many of them around us, so many little things that we can all do. And I was lucky that the little thing I tried, it worked. And that excited me. I had no idea. I had no background. I had no preparation for that. The more it worked, the more excited I got, and that's how it took from one stage to the next stage. On the way, you answer a lot of questions because people cannot believe what you do is right. And in the meantime, you persuade yourself in your own work what you do is right. And you try to explain to other people. Along the way, what became a kind of faith with me, the unlimited creative power of human beings, unlimited potential of human beings. You look at those pictures, all the pictures that we have been seeing, in each case, the rural scene, either in Africa or in Asia or wherever. None of them look like they have anything inside of them. But as a human being, each of them, each of us, has unlimited capacity, unlimited creative capacity to cope with the odds around us. Then why do you have to remain that way? Why can't they use that creative capacity and explode into a different level of living? Because we were not told that we had that capacity. Where society has been very unkind. We build a society where we are always telling them that you have no capacity at all, and they accepted that position. So one of the best things I think we can do to build the confidence in people and believe that they have the power to take control of their own lives. Today it becomes much simpler. In the past, probably it was difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. But today it becomes much simple because of technology. We are very lucky being on this day and age because things are happening on the technology front so fast, we can hardly cope with it. We keep changing models after models because the next model is better than the previous model. A lot more things in the next model, and suddenly something new comes which you never thought about. Imagine what happened in the last 10, 20 years. If you go back
20 years. We are all more than 20-year-old here, so you can easily go back 20 years. Try to imagine 20 years back, reflect what would be in 2013. I bet you could not imagine what we have right now. It's a science fiction-like thing that we have right now. And science fiction is a good thing. We let our imagination kind of go up, and kind of wild imaginations, Star Trek imaginations in science fiction. The important thing is science follows science fiction. If we didn't have the science fiction, probably science would not have come where it has. But we don't have social fiction. So society doesn't move very much. You need wild imaginations about society, like we do in science. If we had those social fictions, movies, TV series on social fictions, I bet you we'll create these societies. When Salman Khan stands up, talks about his Khan Academy, or I read about him, I listen to his speeches, always comes to my mind. We won't need Oxford anymore. Whole world will be one big Oxford. We need only one global university, the best. You cannot beat them. It's possible today. But since we don't have social fiction, we don't imagine that. So the Salman Khan has to do it in his own way, whatever he does. And everybody becomes curious, but still it doesn't come in the shape it's ready to be. We can change everything by applying the technology. One thing I have been saying many, many years, I say someday we will have some gadgets which will be like Aladdin's lamp. And a poor woman in the village of Bangladesh, she will touch the gadget, and the genie will come out of it, from the Aladdin's lamp. And the genie say, "What can I do for you?" And she will say, "Look, I'm sick. I cannot do anything. I have to work. Otherwise, I cannot finish my work that I have to sell." And the genie will say, "Don't worry, ma'am. I'll find everything for you so that you'll feel better." And he will arrange everything. I thought I was talking about some very, very distant future. Today, everybody has that Aladdin's lamp in their pocket. It's called a cell phone or a mobile phone or whatever you want to call it. You touch it, digital genie comes out. What do you want? You want the restaurant, weather condition, or whatever, all those apps that you are fond of. You touch them, digital genie answers your question. But digital genie answers your question to the extent manufacturers of those genie thought about. If the thought process of those manufacturers we could impact on, and in addition to giving information about the restaurants and their menu and their which dish is better than the others, they could have given us concrete solution to the problems that we have around us. Like today, there's absolutely no reason why anybody in the world should be illiterate. No reason. Digital genie is just ready. But nobody has prepared the digital genie to do the job. Learning to write, learning to read, learning to send letters would be such a fun thing for everybody. I see 80-year-old grandma and 5-year-old granddaughters fighting over this gadget. Who would like to have it so that he starts writing letters and so on? Because it's so easy to find out how to do that. Education should be fun, not a drudgery. But the way we design things is such a scary thing. Going to school probably in most of our countries is the most scary thing for kids, which shouldn't be. So it's a question of how we design things. Our resources are right in our hands, but we are not putting our mind into it. If we put our mind into it, it will happen. If we imagine, it will happen. If we don't imagine, it will never happen. So that's the power of social entrepreneurs. Imagine things that doesn't exist now, but must exist tomorrow. Another fate that comes from the changes, the first change of the world. Every day we see what was used to be impossible just became possible and became routine. Forgot that one time it was impossible. Making photocopy was such an impossible thing in our lifetime. When Xerox machine came, what a wonder of the wonders. People forgot that there's a company called Xerox. But that was the miracle. Today, nobody worries about it. So if at that speed impossibles become possibles, it will be hard time to make a list of impossibles in 20 years, 30 years down the line, because you can't find anything what you call impossible. But all the right kind of impossibles would be addressed if we start imagining that. So that's a challenge to us. Why should anybody in the world be a poor person? Why can't we imagine a world not a single person will be a poor person? Is it that impossible? We're talking about human beings, not some stones or some objective without life or anything, intelligence. In a human being which has unlimited possibilities. Why should anybody be unemployed? Have you ever thought about it? Is the person who is unemployed is responsible for his unemployment? Is there something wrong with him? Wrong with her? No. He and she is a very capable person, very intelligent, very active person. Then why is she is unemployed? Have you ever answered that question? Is it his fault or fault of the system? Why the system should condemn people? Shouldn't be the other way. People should be condemning the system. People is far superior than the system. But we accept the system as it is. We don't question. Let us question and redesign. We'll have a new world for us. Why should anybody be on welfare? Is there something wrong with that person? Nothing. But we got used to it. We ruined their lives because we accepted it. So you can go make your own list. Just ask the question, why? Nothing wrong with the person. Absolutely nothing. So it's all a question of putting our mind and redesigning here a little bit, here a little bit, or redesign the whole thing. And all these systems, institutions, the policies that we inherited for hundreds of years are not appropriate for this century anymore. Because our technology is taking us far ahead of the capacity of the institutions we built. So that's the challenge. That's what the social entrepreneurship that I understand is all about. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
How do you honor a man who has given us and the world so much? Well, we asked his daughter to help us out. Monica Yunus has graced the great opera houses and recital halls of the world with her gorgeous soprano voice. Not surprisingly, she is also a social entrepreneur. In 2005, Monica organized a benefit concert for those affected by Hurricane Katrina. That success led her to found Sing for Hope, an organization that mobilizes more than 1,000 artists of all disciplines to reach out to underserved communities. We are deeply honored that she is with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, here to sing for us and for her father is world-renowned soprano, Monica Yunus.
Very, very reinvigorating experience to be here with all of you. And I say it best in song. So I picked a song. The first one was from Puccini's La Bohème, Quando me vo, Musette's Waltz. And this next song is Yes, My Heart. And I think it absolutely encapsulates the joy that we all feel in being here together. And one thing I will say about my father, since I have a microphone, two things I've learned from him is that you always look forward and you keep going, no matter what. No matter what. Yes. And that your voice matters. Literally and figuratively.
And so we come to the end of the journey we began this evening in exile. With our fellow travelers, we've crisscrossed the globe, from the Sudan to Syria, Europe to Pakistan, Pakistan to the United States, and finally to Bangladesh. With scientists, we've wound our way back in time and then caught up, fast forwarding through millions of years to the geological now of a new epoch. Along the way, we've been accompanied by some extraordinary artists. Their work gives voice to the timelessness of human experience, from the nomadic music of the Sahel, the very roots of rock and roll, to the soaring melodies of opera and Broadway. But it's the social entrepreneurs who have brought us to the crossroads and asked us to choose. We can stay the course we're on, indifferent to suffering, hardened to denial. Or we can dare to imagine social fiction and a new path forward. The great social theorist Erich Fromm once wrote, "To have faith means to dare, to think the unthinkable, yet act within the limits of the realistically possible." The social entrepreneurs we have honored tonight have dared to take us to the very frontier of that realistically possible. They have shown us incredibly powerful ways to resolve conflict, revive health, reinvent education, and restore human dignity. Above all, they have given us reason to hope. Hope that we may yet do what has to be done, not just because science tells us time is running out, but because of our idealism and integrity, our care and conscience, and fierce resolve. Thank you for thinking the unthinkable. Thank you for doing the doable. And now let's all go and party at the Ashmolean. Good night. Thank you all for being here.